Hi, I'm Grady, and I'll be showing you how you can create your very own following ghost in Unity for AR project. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is create a 3D Unity project of your own, and then once you've got that created, you should have, well, minus our little ghost friend here, you should have a large space to work in. First thing you're going to want to do after that is go to File, go to Build Settings, click this Development Build option, but you're going to also want to make sure that you're on Android platform. So by default, you'll probably be on this Windows, Mac, Linux, and you can see how it says switch platform here, and that's because I've switched to the Android platform. You can tell because of this icon here that's in line with it on the selections. You're going to want to do that. And then at this point, I would suggest that you connect your Android device via USB cable to your computer and then select your device here. This will help later when you are ready to build and then run your project, at which point you will click this button here. Then let's close out of that. If you go to Edit, go to Project Settings here at the bottom, select Player on the left-hand side, and then make sure you're in this Central Android Settings tab, and then try to follow along with me and match my settings as best you can, because while most of these should in theory set up by themselves, because we clicked on that development build checkbox earlier, you still want to be careful, making sure that there is a API level 26 Oreo minimum API level, and making sure that the scripting backend is set to IL2 CPP. The IL2 CPP stands for C++, which is just converting the internal language to C++ for the backend, because there are certain scripting changes that need to be done by the device itself. And so this enables the build to properly process the rest of the project. All right, so once you have that all set up, you're going to want to go to Window, go to Package Manager, and then make sure you've selected this and gone into the Unity registry. And then you'll want to, first of all, scroll down and find yourself this Google ARCore XR plugin. You're going to want to install that. It'll normally say install like this here. You're going to want to install, and then you'll know it's installed because of this check mark, and also it will say remove instead of install if you click on it once more. Once you've got that, you're going to also want to click on this AR Foundation, install that, and again, you'll know it's installed when you've got this check mark here, and this will say remove instead of install when you've got it installed.
Hello, I'm Isaac, and I'll be taking you through the AR section and final build of the project here. So I created a new folder called Demo, and everything I'm going to use for the building of the project is I'm just going to throw in here. So if we right click and then create a new scene, we call this Demo Fin because this is our final demo. Then open the scene. You'll see this replace up here. So once we do that, we're just going to right click again over on our left hand side here, and we're going to go down to XR, pull in an XR origin for mobile. Then we have a few more things we need. So we need an right click again, XR AR session. Then we need to right click XR AR. Empty object actually works fine for this one. So we'll go empty objects, and we have, this will be our image tracker. Image tracker. And with the image tracker, we'll add an image, AR tracked image manager. Manager goes right here. We'll change this to 1. And we'll move into our demo folder again. Right here, let's just right click, create. And what we're going to create is a XR object that is reference image library. Reference image library. Name it something you can recognize. So this library is basically an object that keeps track of the image objects. So whatever image you want to use, I'm going to use this artboard. Artboard 6, this is company logo for Bug-Free Productions. Once it pulls in here, you can specify the size. I won't do that though. Keep texture at run, not necessary. You can have multiple images that you track. We're just going to use the one. And then in image tracker, into our image manager, we can pull in our, there we go. Pull in our reference library into our tracking manager in our serialized library field. Tracking image prefab, we'll fill that in later. Alright, the last thing we need to do is to add a little safety measure to our scene. So I'd like to create a 3D object of cube. Call it something like safety cube. I don't like to leave spaces in my names. Then for safety cube, we also need to adjust the scale. So lock scale and change to 0.3. This means the cube will be 0.3 meters. Actually, let's go 0.2. So cube of 0.2 meter size, because unit translates to meters in AR environment. So since the AR environment is generated on runtime, that means our safety cube will get a position relative to our origin point when the scene fully loads, which lets us know that our AR is working and also placing and tracking objects, which can be helpful if we're troubleshooting placement information. Alright, so next we can go and right click, create C# script, and you can name it SpookRift. But I've already gone through and done this, so I'll just open it up in my Visual Studio here. And you can go ahead and go through and delete the template methods that were in here and replace them with variables. So if we label all of our sections, we have the variables at the top, and we'll have one serialized field here that is a game object, Ghost Prefab, and this will be the game object that we instantiate. Then we have a protected game object ghost post. So this is a ghost object should we have instantiated already, and we'll see that later in the code. Once we have these variables, we'll move into the methods. And in methods, we have one built-in method. So on enable, we have private void on enable, and then in here we defined this. So we have start coroutine delay spawn, which will handle delaying the spawning of our object. We want it delayed because we have a time when our spawning objects will be at 0, 0, and putting even just a short delay spawn on there ensures that it'll be where it's supposed to be when we go to actually instantiate the ghost. So what I like to do is to create another public virtual void spawn ghost. And basically what I want this to do is to move or spawn my ghost. So if ghost post is null, meaning I have not spawned a ghost before, then I want to create a ghost. And if I have created a ghost, and even if I'm creating a ghost, I want to align its transform rotation, so the ghost post transform rotation, equal to the transform rotation of this spawning object. And then we do the same with the position. Ghost post.transform position equal transform position. Then we have public virtual void create ghost. This takes care of the actual creation of the ghost, i.e. instantiation. So we assign our ghost post to instantiate, which returns a new object. And that new object is the same as our ghost prefab that we defined up above. And the position that we're going to instantiate it at is transform position. And the rotation we want it to have is transform rotation, meaning this object's position and this object's rotation. Lastly, we have the delay spawn. So private IE numerator delay spawn, because I don't want other objects calling this private coroutine. And coroutine will basically run on every frame and make sure it runs similar to a actual coroutine. And it has to have one yield return at minimum. And our yield return will be a new wait for seconds. What this does is it creates a new object of wait for seconds type that has a wait time of 0.1 f, f standing for float, so 0.1 float, which stands for 0.1 seconds. So this yield return will wait for 0.1 seconds. And after it waits, we spawn our ghost, calling spawn ghost. So if we head back to our Unity,
I'm Nicholas. I'll be showing you how to make a object follow the camera or the player. So right now I've just got an empty scene here. I'm gonna go ahead and make a capsule, but you could use a cube or a sphere or anything like that. So I'll just name this follower. So now you can see in the scene here we got a capsule. Can move it around and such, but for now we're just gonna leave it at 0, 0, 0. So there that is. And we've got our camera. It's at -10. So in order to get this to follow the camera, we're gonna need to make a script. So in this little project tab here in the assets, I have a folder named scripts. You can make a folder by going create folder and naming it scripts. I'm going to go into there. So I've got this script here. Been using this for a project where we have a ghost following a player. So in order to make your own script, I would just name it follow or something of the sort. You go create C# script, and then once the C# script shows up here, you give it a name and you'll double click it to open it. And now I'm gonna open this up and show you how it works. So got all these usings here. These are just required for Unity to be able to function properly with like the different methods and functions we're calling. So here we just have a public class that inherits from the mono behavior for ghost follow player. In your case, this will be called follow or whatever you named it. For variables, we're going to have a protected game object that I named XR camera. Then we'll have a range, which this just makes it so in the scene editor, you'll have a selectable range and a serialized field with a float named speed, which I've set to 2. This will just give it a default value, but you can change it inside of the Unity editor once you apply this to something. So first, we're gonna go on enable. We're gonna find the main camera in the scene, and then we'll set that to be this game object XR camera that we made. And then within fixed update, we're gonna update the rotation and the position of our object that we have this applied to. In my case, it's a ghost or a capsule. So transform.rotation, this is going to be the rotational values on the capsule or the ghost, and we're using this function here to figure out what the direction is of the camera and point towards it. And then this function here sets the position. Sets it by finding a position that's in the direction of the camera, and it does this with a reference to time, so it moves at a set speed. So now I'm gonna go ahead and show you what we do with this script. Of course, make sure you hit the save button so it applies the things, and then it'll do a little rebuild here. So we're going to take this script and apply it to this follower that we made. Now you can see here we have the speed that we can select in the inspector. I'm gonna set this to 3, sure. Now, if we run the scene or hit the play button, we should see it start coming towards the camera. And if we actually go back to the scene view and grab this camera, we can move the camera and you can see the capsule follow it around.
I'll be showing you how we attached animations to our ghost and some general rules for how you can too with any assets that you have. So the first thing we did was we got an asset from the Unity Asset Store, and then once we imported that into our project, we were able to go into this prefab asset folder, and then we can drag that in. As you can see, it just sort of popped into the scene. Now, just so that on camera it will appear a bit better, I'm going to scale it down. You might end up changing the scale for any of the assets you install too, but the main thing we're after is just to make that visible on the game view. So the first thing you're going to want to do once you've got your asset downloaded is then once you've located it and brought it into the scene is usually you'll have to open the asset with these arrows in the hierarchy like this. And you should see an icon similar to this sort of packaged box. And usually that is indicative of what the object that you'll be animating is. And it's also an icon that frequently appears on animations. So what you can do is you can make sure that there is an animator component. Most assets are pretty well set up and usually have an animator already put on an asset that they've built for you, but sometimes they don't. You'll need to add that yourself. For this asset that I have here, the creator added this animator and they also added this other script for their own uses. But the thing we're most interested in is this controller component, because without a controller, no animator can go through any animations. So by clicking on that, I've located it in my project window. Your asset might not come with a controller by default. So the way you'll create that is you can right click in the project window, create animator controller, and then you can name it something like, for my purposes, I would probably call it Ghost Anim Controller. But since we already have one for our Ghost, I don't need to do that. And then once you've got a controller for yourself, you can either double click this or you can click open on that controller and then it will open up an animator window for you. As you can see, the creator of this asset already took measures to put in all of the ghosts animations into one controller so that all I need to do is to right click and make transition to any of the different animation nodes that I want to move to. So for instance, if I wanted to move to this idle node after the dance 2 animation plays, I could select this arrow here, which you can add conditions to. And one common way to change conditions through transitions is by adding parameters. So clicking parameters up here, and then clicking plus, and then adding perhaps a boolean or one of the other types of objects. I'm going to just name this one is dancing. And then, for instance, we would probably want to use this to say that, oh, this condition, by adding it with plus over here, that we only want it to move from dance 2 animation to the idle animation if dancing is false. But then we can also add a transition to go back, doing the reverse, saying that when is dancing is true. But for this project, we don't need to do any complicated animation transitions or anything like that. All we want is a simple animation that already loops. And usually these will be idle animations or dance animations. They won't generally be things that you would most likely only see once, such as attack animations or jump animations, things like that. But that's the general gist of how you operate inside the animator. Now let's see how it looks inside of our scene view here when we press play. Always make sure that your controller is hooked up to the animator on the object, otherwise it will not animate properly, or at all in some cases. As you can see, our ghost friend here is just dancing. He's playing that dancing animation over and over again. And over here on the right, you can see the animator window is showing the progress of where the animations currently are being processed. So, for instance, if we still had those transitions there, we would see that when we toggled is dancing on or off, it would transition up, sort of having the same blue bar effect go up there, and then process the idle animation and then come back down.
Let's go right click and create a new folder. I'm going to call this demo prefabs. Demo prefabs. And I'll go to the scene just because it's faster. And if we right click, create a 3D object. Let's go with a sphere. And then drag this into the demo prefabs folder. We have a sphere that I'll rename something like portal. And then portal has, you can see the properties here, has a transform, scale, which we should probably change to like 0.2. So lock and scale. Has a mesh render. Click to minimize, click to minimize. And let's add our component. So this is gonna be our spook rift. And now that we edit this down here, this should be applied to the one in scene as well. And we can go ahead and delete that from the scene. So this is our spawner. Now let's create our following ghost placeholder. Let's make a capsule. Let's prefab him and rename him. And he'll be Ghosty. Delete from scene. And then let's add a ghost follow player script that Nick made with you guys. Let's put this at 0.3 just for testing, so that you'll see it'll go slower, because otherwise that's 2 meters. I assume 2 meters per second, so we want much less than that. And then let's set his scale too. So let's go capsule. And then lock scale to 0.2. Cool. Then in the tracked image manager, we go to what we want to place. So we want to place our portal on the image prefab, because we want the portal to instantiate when we see the image. And then the portal, we want to add the ghosty, because when the portal enables and displays, we want to spawn the ghosty. Then the last thing, if you haven't done so already, is you need to go and enable developer mode on your mobile device for Android. It's different for a couple different devices. So look up your specific device. But we can go to File, Build Settings, and that opened off screen, so here we go. And we'll notice we're just going to use a default device, but you would select your device here. I've already built this to my phone, and I'll come back with a build using these placeholder assets so that you guys can see. You saw the build of the Ghost project using our placeholder geometric shapes, like the capsule and the sphere. So now we're going to go ahead and add in our ghost objects. First, we'll talk a little bit about prefabs. So you'll see in the image tracker, we need to use a prefab rather than an object in the scene. So for instance, we won't want to put our safety cube in here. That's because what we actually want to pass in is a template. So you can think of a prefab as a template with different configurations for it to be later used and instantiated into the scene. This is so it keeps everything consistent and offers us a few extra little capabilities here. So I'm going to go into Assets Prefabs and grab the little ghost that Nick and Grady have probably been showing you how to make. And we'll open and just see what's in here. You see all these components are part of this prefab template. And one nice thing you can do about prefabs is you go left click, Control D. Then we see this. So our new one, LG underscore 011. Let's see if we can rename this. Right click, rename. LG underscore 02. And then over here we can see our project. So I'm using the demo folder with demo prefabs. So I'm just going to drag and drop that into there. And then when we move folders, we'll see there he is. And let's go ahead and remove the follow script from this one since we already have it on the capsule. After we've removed that, we'll go to the capsule. And you'll notice in the earlier video I had these set to 0.2 for scale. If you change them to 0.7, they'll be a little bit closer to what I had in the video. And then let's drag in our ghost into our prefab. So we double click the prefab we want to edit. It opens over here in hierarchy, and then we just drag our other prefab in. And now our ghost is part of this prefab. And we're going to adjust the ghost's little scale to 0.5. And in the ghost, the capsule part, we're just going to go and turn off the mesh render. Then we might as well go to the ghost and just move him down a hair to about there. Then while we're in here, we can further edit this a little bit. We'll just remove the component of this and this, so remove the capsule collider and the rigid body from the instance of the prefab in our ghostly prefab. Alright, save that. And then if we go back to demos, or back to prefabs, Rift Orb. So Rift Orb is a copy of a Hobble Studios object that we got. You could download a free type of asset and also replace it in this way. But we're going to be using Hobble's Magic Orbs. Hobble's Glowing Orbs. I'm just going to create a quick duplicate of that. So click Control D, right click, rename, Portal 2. We'll drag this over into demo prefabs. We're not going to adjust the scale on this one, but we can go ahead and remove nothing. So let's open our Portal prefab. So double click and then drag in Portal 2. Leave our scale of 0.2. Turn our Rift off. We want the Mesh Collider off. And that should be enough. Then we'll go here. Maybe just take that Y off. So Y position to 0. So that's centered with where our sphere was. And if we go back to our scene, nothing has changed here, but we've changed our prefabs, or our templates if you want to think of them that way. And from now on, all you need to do to edit either the portal or the ghost is go and adjust these prefabs of Ghosty and Portal. In the next clip, you'll see the changes that were made and how your project should look after you do your next build. And to do your next build, you just connect your device and go build run.